Hi, I'm Kyla. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be discussing a little bit of a heavier topic. Recently, a true crime YouTuber by the name of Zavirl has come under fire for selling autopsy photos of a child from a crime case. So this video will include discussions about true crime, unethical behavior in true crime content, as well as autopsy photos, of course not showing the photos, but discussions around autopsy photos of a child. So if any of that is too heavy for you, I completely understand if this is not the video for you, and I'll see you in my next one. With all that being said, we'll just get into the whole situation now. And I will be looking down a little bit. I just have my notes here because I wrote a lot for this video. I wanted to make sure I included all the information. So of course we're going to talk about this specific YouTuber and situation, but before we get into that, I want to touch briefly on true crime and like why I like it and my connection with true crime content, because I wanted to talk about this topic as a viewer of true crime, a longtime viewer of true crime. I myself have always enjoyed true crime content, like as far back as I can remember. It's been something that I was interested in. I even took psychology and criminology courses when I was in university because the psychology behind crimes and why they happen was always really interesting to me. And even just like the aspect of criminology, like how crime cases are solved, the technology and what goes into solving a crime, that's always been really interesting to me as well. So it kind of got me thinking like why there's so many creators who make true crime content, why it is so popular, or why do people like it? Because I know my reasoning, but in my research I found a few key reasons for why a lot of people like true crime. So the first is human nature. We as humans are more interested in the darker sides of humanity, and according to BBC, it isn't just Schadenfreude, sorry if I pronounced that wrong, as the theory goes, but that we evolved to react quickly to potential threats. Bad news could be a signal that we need to change what we're doing to avoid danger. 2, the true crime gives us a look into our society's culture and anxieties. It plays into morbid curiosity, a common psychological trait. Like a train wreck, you can't look away, and it also feeds our desires to solve mysteries and puzzles, see crimes brought to justice, and to understand what happened. And 3, it gives us insight into the human brain and why people behave the way they do. It lets you examine the darker side of society from a safe and comfortable space such as your home. And that leaves us with one important question: is true crime content ethical? And I'm not going to pretend that I am like the messiah of ethical content. I really don't know. I think it's like case by case basis, and I really do think it's up to each individual person to decide what they're comfortable with. But of course there are instances such as the one we'll be discussing today where it's very clearly not an ethical way to produce that type of content. But in general, like I do myself enjoy true crime content, which is why I wanted to discuss this topic today, just because it's something that I followed. I mean, I've never really watched Zavirl before, but true crime content on YouTube in general is something that I watch. But in recent years, I find the ethics of true crime content has been called into question a little bit more, and people are becoming less comfortable with certain types of true crime content. A good example of that would be when people are doing their makeup while discussing true crime cases, or eating big meals and discussing a case. But yeah, I don't know, it does feel a little bit disrespectful in my opinion. Anyways, if you enjoy that content, I'm not saying you're disrespectful or you're doing something wrong. I can see why it's been called into question because it does come off a little bit desensitized, a little bit careless, and maybe not the most respectful to the families of the victims who could potentially come across those videos. A few true crime YouTubers who I really like, that I feel like do a really good job of being respectful and just presenting the information in a helpful way, would be Kendall Ray and Danielle Holland. I love both of them a lot. I find their content very respectful. Kendall especially, I know that she speaks a lot of the time with the families of the true crime cases, so of course they are okay with her making the video if they're in the video, and she gets their perspective. And oftentimes as well, I find that these two tend to wait for all the information of a case to come out before they put together a video, rather than making updates every time something happens and just try and get as many clicks and views and make as many videos as they can about a case. Not to say there's anything wrong with that. I mean, that's what news stations do at the end of the day, is they update every time there's a new update. But I would say, of course, when you're getting paid by views on a channel, it does almost come across like you're milking it a little bit. Like, not every single little thing that comes out needs to be its own 10-minute video monetized with ads. That's just my opinion. Again, I'm not saying that there's anything necessarily inherently wrong with people who make that content. I truly feel like it's a case-by-case basis, and like the way the information is being presented really falls into whether or not I think it's okay. Oh, also quick side note, I think I'm getting sick, so I apologize if I sound more nasally in this video. I mean, I feel like I'm always kind of nasally, but I'm a little congested, so it might be a bit worse today. Anyways, so who is the YouTuber in question on today's video? The channel that we'll be discussing today is called Zavirl. She has about 87,000 subscribers on her channel, where she discusses true crime cases, and her videos get anywhere from like 2,000 views to like 20, 30,000. Some of them have a bit more, like 60,000. I hadn't heard of her or seen any of her videos prior to this situation, but my initial take when I scrolled down her page is that, as evidenced here in these screenshots, the thumbnails and the titles seem very like clickbaity. For example, there's this one of "Who is Brian Kober?" and like the photo's really dramatic. I don't know. I don't get the best vibes, I'm gonna be honest. But yeah, so the situation, what actually happened here. So Zavirl has come under fire for selling access to autopsy photos of Gannon STAUCH. Essentially what she did, she wasn't like selling the pictures, say on eBay or something, but she put the photos behind a paywall and encouraged her followers to go and join her Patreon so that they could see those photos of Gannon. Zavirl was covering the case of Gannon STAUCH on her YouTube channel, where she was frequently making updates about the court and the sentencing of Letitia, the mother, court info, and all that type of stuff. Zavirl filed a public record request and paid, I've heard it's about $400, to receive files from the case and from the court. She received a large batch of documents which included the photos of Gannon from the autopsy, and she put together a video including the autopsy photos and lining up the audio from the coroner and posted it through her Patreon, where she charges $3 at minimum per month. Since then, the situation has blown up and a lot of mainstream media sources have been covering what Zavirl has done, which, I mean, rightfully so. I think it's super wrong, and I don't think this is something that should just be like YouTubers talking about it. I'm really glad that the mainstream media has been covering it. In my personal opinion, even just showing those photos is way too far. It's extremely disrespectful, and there's no reason why anyone on YouTube would need to have access to those photos, anything. Autopsy photos obviously can be very helpful in a courtroom or an investigation, but that's it. There's no need to be reporting it when you're just reporting a true crime case and what happened. That never ever will require to show photos like that, especially of a child, but really of any victim. It's disrespectful. The families could come across it. I can't believe that Zavirl would have even thought that was okay, because if you think about that being your family member, how heart-wrenching that would be to come across that, or to know that potentially hundreds of thousands of people have seen those photos now, is disgusting. YouTubers and their audiences, at the end of the day, are not investigators, and they don't need access to anything of that sort. And then on top of that, that's just sharing them to begin with, but to add insult to that injury, Zavirl was selling the photos. So she was making a profit off of people's morbid curiosity and people wanting to see that, or maybe even people who pay for her Patreon and had no intention of paying for something like that. She's kind of put everyone in a bad place, and I honestly think it's just sick to think that you could profit off of that, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's absolutely repulsive. So now we're gonna move on to Gannon's dad, Al, and how he responded in the news. I'm gonna play a clip here now of Gannon's dad, Al, who went on a news station called News Nation to discuss Zavirl and selling the photos.
It is re-traumatizing. It's hard to, we just finished the trial just over 2 months ago, Brian, and now we're having to kind of relive some of this stuff and not being able to put it behind us.
Yeah, and I think for me, like, what really pushed it over the edge was the charging the money. I mean, obviously posting it alone would be disgusting, but then charging money to see those photos, it's really, really just awful.
The word I use to describe it is evil, Brian. In my opinion, it's just evil. Like the world got enough information from the trial to have every discussion they want to have. Why do we need to go have a freedom of information request and pay for this kind of information and then dishonor my son by putting these photos out there like that? I mean, the world got to see it. I don't know how well you followed it, but the only day I chose not to come to the trial was the day that they showed the autopsy photos. Now I feel like I can't even go on YouTube without the possibility of accidentally coming across these photos.
Yeah, and I when we talked to the prosecutor last night, I mean, they made a special effort to make sure that those photos were not released on the live stream. In other trials that I've covered, they always do that. I mean, they just want the jurors to see them because that's part of, obviously, the legal process, but it's not the kind of thing that the public needs to see at all. Do you think you may take legal action? Is there anything that you can do to get these off the internet to sort of like protect your son?
We've talked through some of those options. The hard part, Brian, is I am just emotionally and psychologically and financially maxed out from the last 3+ years of this process. To take legal action, I just don't know if I have that in me. But what I'm trying to do with you tonight, and I appreciate you having us on, is to help shape the narrative. And I don't really think I have to do much. Based on the messages you've received and the feedback I've seen from other responses, I don't think it's going to take much from us to have these people, repointed in the right direction.
Okay, I just want to quickly pause there to say that I really feel like this gets across just how upsetting and wrong this is. I mean, obviously I would assume you guys already knew that, but if Zavirl watches, which I truly hope that she has, I hope that she can see just the impact of that. And like Al said, it truly feels just evil and wrong to not only to share that, but to sell it for a profit. He even said the only day he didn't attend the court case, and this is for his own son, was the day that those photos were shown, because it's just too painful and it's wrong and no one else needs to see them. And as the news reporter there even said, that the prosecutors themselves go through a lot of work to make sure that on live streams of the court cases and things like that, that is not contained, it's not part of it, and it's not shown to the general public, because there's no need of that. And it is dishonoring to Gannon. It's not fair to Gannon, it's not fair to his family. And also when he said that he doesn't really want to take legal action because the past few years have already been so difficult emotionally, financially, everything like that, to then have to try to start a legal action against Zavirl for doing this, I don't blame him for not having that in him. Like, that is incredibly difficult, and I'm sure he's just done with legal action at this point. He wants probably to put all of this behind him and do what he can to even attempt to move on, which would already be incredibly difficult. So yeah, we'll play the rest of the video, but I think it's just super important to hear Al's words on this and like why this truly is so wrong, and there's no reason why anyone should have even ever thought that that was okay to do.
Yeah, I think people just lose sight of the fact that these are real families dealing with this. I mean, there's a true crime community, and 99% of them have good intentions and are really focused on the victims. I'm sure you felt that through all of this, but there's just those bad apples out there that are trying to make money. The other thing I keep thinking about is the fact that she and others were even able to get the photos. It seems like there should be some kind of law, or it shouldn't be that easy to just write a check and put in a request and be able to get those photos sent to you.
Yeah, once again, I think that's a question for a legal representative. I do believe in the freedom of information to a certain extent, but I think the problem from my perspective is you can't always control what someone with evil intentions will do, and that's what we have in this case here. So I don't know. I'm not a legal guy. I'd have to look at the ins and outs of the FOIA Act and all that. But,
yeah,
there is a lot of good that comes out of release of information. It's just in this instance, and having to bear this burden myself, it's hard to say this, but in this instance, someone has taken that and turned it into evil.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. Well, Al, thank you for coming on. Again, I'm so sorry that you had to go through this. I totally understand you being emotionally exhausted, and this now just adding on to that. I hope that people will continue to be outraged by this, and they can sort of police themselves in a way on YouTube, because it's just, it's just awful, especially when you think about family members like you, Al. So thank you for coming on tonight. I hope people who posted the photos are watching and can hear it straight from you how it makes you feel.
Yeah, I hope so too, Brian. And in closing, I do want to leave you with, I think we're really getting focused on less than 1% of the people, because the majority of people I've come in contact with throughout this past 3+ years have absolutely sustained me and helped me to fight through this process for my son. So I do want to give credit where credit is due on that. And I think those people will continue to shape the narrative that this is unacceptable behavior by a very small portion of people that seek to benefit from, my son's, those horrible pictures of my son. So thank you again, Brian.
Yeah, thank you. I totally agree with you. I'm glad you said that. We'll be in touch. Hopefully we can stay on the story, and maybe we can find some lawmakers or someone who want to spearhead a project to just make it a little more difficult. Obviously, like you said, it's good to be able to file a FOIA and get information, but certain things I think are just too much. It should be a little more difficult. So thank you again, Al. We'll be in touch.
Okay, so that's the clip I wanted to watch there. Obviously, as you can hear just from that one testimony from Al alone, what Zavirl did is completely unacceptable and not okay. But towards the end as well, what he was saying is kind of the reason why I do feel like the ethics in true crime content, there's both sides to the equation here, because Al even said himself that we are only talking about a very small percent of the population who is doing this unethically and in a wrong, and as he described it, evil way. But the rest of them, he did say that he wants to give credit where credit is due, that those people sharing their story have sustained him and helped get him through it. And I think that is what's important to look at as well when you're deciding who to support or who to follow in true crime content. It would be interesting to see if any action is taken. Towards the end, they were kind of suggesting that maybe they would like to help him out in doing something. I think at the very least, Zavirl should be donating any profit that she made from her Patreon. I don't know enough about the law to say if what she did was illegal. It sounds like it wasn't because she accessed the information. But I feel like selling it is where there should be laws against that. If you file and you want access to the information for whatever reason, fine, because I do agree that sometimes having that freedom of information is very important and people shouldn't be limited to what they have access to. But say taking it and then selling it for personal gain, I feel like that should be illegal if it isn't already. So moving on from that, I want to discuss the apologies that Zavirl has made. So after all of this, as most YouTubers do, she decided to give a very half-assed non-apology apology, and then followed up with, of course, another apology, because what do you do when you make one shitty apology? You make a second shitty apology. So I'm gonna put these on the screen. I'm of course gonna read them out loud, but this was the initial apology posted to Zavirl's YouTube community page. Sorry, the lighting is all over the place. I cannot get it right. Anyways, this is the first apology. Hey guys, I want to address what's going on right now with the Gannon autopsy coroner video I created. Unfortunately, this seems to be something where people are very divided on how they feel about it, and I'm hearing a lot from both sides. The reality of the situation is different people feel differently about this. Some people genuinely think making a video including the autopsy photos is bad, and I respect their opinion and feelings. Other people, like myself, think of autopsy photos and the coroner discussing / explaining them as interesting and informative and are able to view it in a more scientific, detached way. It is just one of those things where it depends on the person. So, I'm gonna pause there really quickly, I will keep reading it, but I find the way that this is worded is so interesting. I'm almost like laughing just because it's that appalling. I don't find this funny, of course, but I am blown away by the fact that anyone could post this and think, yeah, that was a good apology. That's what I should say. But the wording of this is really interesting. Some people actually think it's bad, as if it's like mind-blowing that anyone could have thought that was bad. Like, she's shocked. Wow, some people actually think that's bad. Of course, because it is bad. It is wrong. And then to say that other people like myself, that's herself, can view it in a interesting and informative way, interesting, keyword there, and are able to view it in a more scientific and detached way. You should never be detached. Even the people who work on these cases every day are not detached. The reason they do the work that they do is because they are attached, because they feel empathetic, because they want to bring justice to victims of crimes. They want people apprehended for the crimes they commit. They're not detached. They're not viewing it as an interesting thing like a science fair. And also, she's not a scientist. She's not a coroner. There's no reason why this should be viewed in a detached way, in an informative, interesting way. It isn't fucking interesting. I'm sorry, but it is not interesting that a child was harmed and their life was cut short at the hands of their own mother. There is nothing interesting about that. Anyways, we will continue reading the apology because there's a lot more to it, but I just had to touch on that because I find the wording there just something else. Continuing on. I am not adamantly against taking down the video if people are truly unhappy with it. Narcissism is coming out. And I will absolutely consider doing that. But right now, it seems that there are a lot of other people who are acting in bad faith and creating lies for fun and excitement in order to pit others against me. You pit people against you yourself. That is completely your own doing. If you've heard the latest rumor that I've been distributing photos of Gannon's genitalia, then I assure you I have not, and that is not visible in any of the autopsy photos or the coroner video, so it is a bit difficult to sort through what's what. So I agree, if that's a rumor that people have been saying, I have yet to see that anywhere, but if that is a rumor that people have been saying, obviously that's even more wrong and more sick, and people should not be lying about that, but I can also understand confusion of what would be shown in the videos. And then she's saying it's a bit difficult to sort through what's what, but at the end of the day, that small rumor aside, everything she did surrounding this was still completely 100% wrong. Just because that was a rumor, which is definitely not okay to circulate false statements like that, but just because of that, that does not take away the wrongness of what she actually did, because what she actually did is still wrong, period. When there are other creators who have the same autopsy photos up right here on YouTube for public viewing on their channel where anyone can stumble across them and they are not being attacked as I am right now, it becomes obvious that some of this hate I'm receiving is not genuine and is being done for other reasons. YouTube drama gets clicks. Once again, just because other people do it doesn't make it okay. And just because other people do it doesn't mean you don't have to apologize. They're all wrong. If anyone's sharing those, they're wrong. But the one who we've seen is Zavirl, and she was also selling. The other ones aren't selling if it's on YouTube. So I understand some of you have issues with me charging money on my Patreon for the video. If I was charging money for the autopsy files alone or something like that, I think I'd see your point. But in this case, I spent a lot of time and worked hard putting together a video, lining up the coroner's audio and the descriptions along with the appropriate part of the photos she is describing and editing it together to try to make it as informative as possible for the viewer. That is what I'm charging for, which I would hope you can agree is understandable. No? I don't agree, and I do not find that understandable. The issue, even like she said, she wasn't selling just the photos. It wasn't specifically for that. It's for her Patreon, where she creates other content that she charges a fee for. And I don't blame people for having a Patreon where they create additional content and sell it behind a paywall. The issue is that you put behind a paywall photos of a child. Photos that should never have been released to anyone aside from the necessary parties involved in the courtrooms. I don't agree that it's understandable. I don't think anyone should agree that it's understandable. But regardless, this non-apology apology is very self-serving. Anyway, thank you to those who have reached out to me with your take on it in a respectful way, who understand this is simply a bit of a gray area as to what is socially acceptable and what isn't. Like I said, I'm not against removing the video and I care what you think, but it's hard to make sense of it all when I'm getting some very seriously unhinged threats being made against myself and my loved ones, and those threats are coming from those who claim I'm doing something morally objectionable. For those of you who are willing to discuss this rationally and want to communicate your thoughts, please comment on this post, as I might not see it anywhere else. After I deal with the threats, I will come back and read everything here so I can get an idea on the best way to proceed based on all of your input. That was the first apology. I pretty much touched on everything I need to, but I just have to say the fact that she's even calling it a gray area and saying, well, some people are okay with it. It's not a gray area at all. I think that literally pretty much everyone can agree that this is wrong. All the comments on her videos have been about how wrong it is. But yeah, so that was apology one. But like I said, all bad YouTube apologies are followed up with a second bad YouTube apology. She ended up making a video to address it, and of course I'm going to play that as well. So we will listen to that. Prepare to be amazed because it's another good one.
Hi everyone. If you're listening to this, then you likely know about the last few days. I want to apologize to everyone I've hurt, but especially Gannon's family. I've been doing some major soul searching and reflecting. There are many trying to define my motivations, and while I'm not looking for forgiveness or trying to make excuses, I do hope to provide additional context that has not been made clear. I have followed the Letitia STAUCH case closely, and it was actually during the trial that I made the official records request. And it was in El Paso County, Colorado. I requested all the video, audio, and written records. I made no request for autopsy photos. I wanted all trial records, but my main interests were interviews with Letitia. The autopsy photos just happened to be in the files.
That makes it okay. They just happen to be there.
I spent time reviewing what I received so I could provide more info from the trial. I believe many of my images were already shown during the televised trial, and I saw the photos on other public YouTube channels that live streamed the trial and shared the evidence. I didn't think any of the images were new. These photos were already public, although the video I put together with the coroner's voice was my own creation. I chose to put the video on Patreon because of the sensitive nature of the evidence. Putting the evidence behind a paywall meant added security, and I naively thought they wouldn't be made public. The video I created with a voice from the coroner wasn't meant to be shared outside of Patreon, and I chose not to put the photos on YouTube, a public forum, where the views would have allowed me to make more money, and the photos would be seen by more people. Because the video was placed behind a paywall, rumors about the images not being blurred or being different than what was shown in trial started to surface. No photos shows genitalia. I have made no jokes about the photos. I don't even cuss on my channel, and I would never allow derogatory remarks about a victim. I realized my intentions were not communicated well. My channel style is sort of me hanging out with friends and speaking off the cuff, and I did not articulate my reasons or think my decision through. At this time, my Patreon website has been shut down. I am not sharing any of the photos or video anywhere, although you can see the photos published on other popular channels. Nothing you see is from me, nor will ever be. To those who have supported me and followed my channel, and to the true crime community, I'm sorry I let you down. I cannot imagine the pain Gannon's family has gone through. My anger over what happened to Gannon is the reason I started following the case. I'm not this evil, heartless person like many are saying, but I'm also doing a lot of self-reflecting, and I'm looking into sensitivity training. I did not want to add to the family's loss with anything I said or shared about this case. And it will be a long time before I ever trust myself or my decisions again. To Gannon's family, I have no words that can make this better. No one should have to ever go through what you guys have been through. I am so very sorry for any pain that I have caused you.
So there you have it. All that was missing was a ukulele. But automatically, I find this a really bad apology, to be honest. I'm thankful she did at least the bare minimum of saying that she's sorry to Gannon's family and to anyone who she's hurt with her actions. The bar is so low for YouTube apologies that the fact that she even said, I'm sorry, it at least gets 1 point from me, which is saying a lot. But also, she follows up that with saying that she wants to provide more context, which to me just tells me already that the main point of this video is not to apologize for her wrongdoings or to admit her wrongdoing, but rather to try to sway the opinion of what she did and basically explain herself, which there is no explaining that needs to be done. And then she says she isn't meaning to give excuses, but that's quite literally what the whole video is. So starting it by saying, I don't mean to give excuses, doesn't do anything. It's no different than saying, no offense, but, and then saying something wildly offensive. And then she says, which I kind of touched on this briefly, but that she didn't request the autopsy photos, they just happened to be in there. And like, okay, I understand that. Of course, if she received a huge document with everything from the court, yes, the autopsy photos were a part of that. So I understand that she didn't ask for them, but to me, that even if anything makes it worse because she just happened upon those photos and thought to herself in her head, I'm gonna put these together in a video and list it on my Patreon for $3 a month. That does not make it better just because she didn't request the photos. It's the fact that she saw them and instantly thought, I'm gonna capitalize off of this in any way that I can. And if that's not even what she requested, then I don't understand why make that video and not the video that she had planned to do with the documents that she got. Like, I don't get it. If that's not what you were asking for at all, that means she obviously had a plan for whatever other information she got. Why not just discuss the other information? And then she says the photos were already public and that they're allegedly on other YouTube channels. I haven't seen that, but I also haven't gone super far looking for it. But from what I heard in the news report with Al, Gannon's dad, they weren't public, and in fact the coroners did extra work to make sure they weren't shown on the court live streams and things like that. And personally, I'm gonna believe that over the words of someone who is basically saying other people did it too, so don't get mad at me. And then we get into the whataboutism, which is very standard for YouTube apologies. Other YouTubers did it, so don't hold me accountable, hold them accountable. Other YouTubers did it, so why are you only mad at me? Okay, but this is your apology for what you did. Anytime you're apologizing, it does not matter what other people have done. If you're apologizing for something, that's between you and the person you're apologizing to. In this case, yes, you are apologizing publicly, but it's between you and the issue that you've done. It's not about, well, this person did this and this person did that. Who cares? What you're apologizing for is what you did. If they need to apologize for their actions, they can do that as well. But there shouldn't be this crossover of like, other people did this, so I shouldn't have to apologize. She then justifies herself putting it behind a paywall, saying that it was a safety measure. So first it was, I worked really hard and I think you guys should understand I want to charge for that. Now it's, well, it was a safety thing because YouTube is so public and I just wanted to be on Patreon so it wouldn't go to as broad of an audience. If you're posting something with the intention of it not going to a broad audience, don't post it online. As soon as something's online, you no longer have control of where that goes. That's something that we're taught in school, at least I was. And at the end of the day, yes, Patreon is behind a paywall, but it's still public. It's still a public thing that anyone can access to, anyone can pay it, and surely there are people who know how to even get behind those paywalls. I don't know, but I just feel like that's a thing. And then she tries to justify it by saying if she posted on YouTube, she would have gotten more views and probably gotten paid more than what she made off of Patreon. But she's acting like she had to post it and monetize it in some way. Like it was either Patreon behind the paywall or YouTube with monetized views. But there is a third option, which is just not to post it. And then as well, near towards the end there, she discussed inappropriate rumors that were happening regarding the content of the photos. That is unfortunate that those rumors are circulating. That is also kind of par for the course when you're selling autopsy photos of a child. So unfortunately, play stupid games, win stupid prizes. And then she said she's looking into sensitivity training, which is good, but I also feel like if you need to do that in order to not sell autopsy photos of a child, then maybe you just shouldn't be making those videos at all. That's just my opinion. I don't think you have the emotional intelligence required if you need to have training to tell you not to do that. And then of course, the comments came through and they were not having it. I'm just gonna read a couple here that I really liked. Someone said, the fact that you didn't already know that selling photos of a murdered child is depraved and heartless is really alarming. Yep. She's sorry for the backlash, not the actions. She's horrible and knew exactly what she was doing. She's a grown woman that knows right from wrong. Yeah, I agree. It's like, and then someone else said, the fact that you sat there at your computer and stared at a screen, editing together a video of a child, a deceased child, being autopsied and didn't once think that something was wrong says absolutely everything I need to know about you. I just think it's not okay, and I find it really frustrating when YouTubers make these apologies and try to pretend they didn't know that that wasn't okay. I can't even understand. I'm trying to put myself into the mindset of someone who would do that and then say like, oh, I had no idea. And I literally cannot. I can't for the life of me even begin to imagine why you would think this is okay. And she didn't really explain why she thought it was okay. Of course, in the first apology, she kind of said like, I can view it in a scientific, detached way. But to me, that isn't a reason. Like, I don't think there is a reason, or at least I don't think we'll ever be told the reason, because the true reason was probably that she knew that that would be profitable and that people do have morbid curiosity. That's part of why true crime content is popular to begin with. I also find it interesting how in her initial apology, she said that some people were on her side. I've yet to see any single comment or video at all even implying that some of what she did was okay. And then she received some backlash about how people were claiming the video was monetized or the apology was monetized. So she made a statement about that. I'll pop that statement up right here and I'll read it. Monetization is off in this video and has been this whole time. If you don't believe me after this, I really can't do anything more to convince some of you. You just aren't going to believe anything I say, even when I show you, but I'm trying my best. I'm sorry. Sad face. But I think I'm going to move on now. You guys can continue to talk about this, but I'm not. I'm sorry for the pain I caused the family. I had no ill intentions, although now looking back, of course I wish I would have thought it out better, but I can't go back in time. I can only move forward and learn from this. I'm sorry to everyone I hurt. Everyone who joined my Patreon will be refunded. Oh, I forgot to add, so click in the pic. You can see that it's not monetized. So I will say, YouTube will still put ads on front of a video, even if it's not monetized, because at the end of the day, YouTube still makes money from the ads, regardless if the creator chooses to or not. With this little statement, I do feel like she comes across very like, feel sorry for me. I'm sorry I did bad, but like, you guys don't believe me. Like, it's very sulky. You guys just aren't gonna believe anything I say. I'm trying my best. I'm gonna move on. You can keep talking about this, but I'm out. Like, as if she's better than it, as if she can just withdraw herself from the situation when she is the sole cause of the situation. So, where does this leave us with true crime as a whole? So I have to agree with STAUCH when I say that I truly think that 90 to 99% of true crime content is done with a pure heart and good intentions, raising awareness for cases, just discussing cases as a whole, to be informative, helpful, or to advocate for victims and their families. I don't think this situation means that true crime content in its entirety is unethical or bad, but rather, as some of the commenters have said, it's a cautionary tale to anyone who makes this type of content. Respect and empathy need to be where content is led going forward, or where it should always have been led, especially in this type of space. And also, just of course, the main point of this video, and something that should be given, is that profiting off of photos that are not publicly available of any crime at all is wrong. That's just how I see it. I don't see anything wrong with YouTubers doing sponsors on true crime videos and stuff, because that is something that is also brought up. Like, you're still profiting off of true crime. That's a little bit different because you aren't profiting off of the case. At the end of the day, if you're spending your whole life, it's your full-time job to research and make videos like this, I don't think there's anything wrong with making a profit. At the end of the day, news stations who report on true crime also profit. That's how their businesses stay alive. A sponsor is better than just selling photos of the case, because when you're doing a sponsor, you're selling the product that you're sponsored by, deodorant or whatever, and you're not selling access to information and photos of victims. And of course, as long as it's done respectfully, like, I think that there are sponsors that could be inappropriate or not respectful to put on a true crime video itself. And true crime YouTubers do put a lot of time and effort into their videos, like the researching that goes into it, scripting, making sure that all of the information is there. It takes a lot of time, and I don't think there's anything wrong with being compensated by that, especially not by views or something that's a little bit more passive like that. The line is firmly drawn for me at actively selling information the way that Zavirl has. In my opinion, this is a very, very big mess up and just a complete lack of empathy driven by just greed and wanting to make more money and profit off of a situation. I'm sure Zavirl will come back to making content. She hasn't since that video. I personally don't want her to, because to me, this situation while yes, people can make mistakes, this situation truly shows the point of her content to her was to monetize. And even with her thumbnails and stuff, like outside of this, I find them a little bit icky. They give me bad vibes. It just feels very like for profit and not for raising awareness or anything. And I hope if she does plan to come back to making true crime content, that she actually does go through with the sensitivity training. I don't know how much help that can actually do. If that time comes, I hope the viewers will choose to watch who they feel align with their ethics. I hope that people don't just go back to watching her and kind of just pass it off. Like if this is a situation that her viewers did not agree with, the best thing that any of us can do is to not continue watching, because at the end of the day, even though the view doesn't cost you a viewer anything, if someone's making money off of the views from their channel, they're gonna keep going. Like that's just what it is. So I think that ultimately, if you're a viewer of her channel, or if you ever were in the past, the best thing you can do going forward if you don't support this type of behavior is just not to watch anymore. But yeah, that's all from me. Let me know what you thought of the situation in the comments below, as well as I would love to hear from you guys if you even like true crime content or why you like true crime content, because I kind of explained why I like it, but I would love to hear from you. Hit the subscribe while you're down there and give this video a like if you enjoyed it. And with that, I'll see you in the next one. Bye.